Welcome to An Actor's Arc. I'm Sean Douglas, and this season I talk with 7 actors in the early leg of their artistic journeys, how they got started, and how they have found their footing. In this episode, I talk with Folami Williams. Hi, Folami Williams. Welcome to An Actor's Arc.
Hi, Sean. Thank you so much for inviting me to sit down with you today.
Can we start by just talking about how that journey began for you?
It started as a kid. I remember my mother getting season tickets to the touring shows that would come to your city. But these shows came and set up in our high school auditorium.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not necessarily like a big arena or anything like that.
And where was that high school?
Danville, Virginia.
Great.
30 minutes from the border of North Carolina. So Southern Virginia.
Great.
And I remember going many seasons, but I remember a few plays. I saw Big, the musical. I think it was Fiddler on the Roof, and maybe one other one, but and it just started there. It started just being able to use my imagination, see it in front of me. And then as I went to high school, I did a play here and there, but I was mostly in the marching band. And then
what did you play?
I played the trumpet for 3 years, and then I played the mellophone. I like the mellophone.
The mellophone.
Oh. Yeah, it's the French horn on the field. It's not cool, but very beautiful. But it wasn't until going to college that I thought about being an actor and what that meant as an adult, even though in college you're only kind of an adult. And it was just, I did a lot of random things trying to figure out which degree I was going to end up majoring in. And I ended up with a BA in drama, which left me very confused about what to do after undergrad. But that is what I ended up with. And I knew I wanted to act. I just didn't really know how to do it, but I had my degree. So that's kind of where I started.
Good. So let me just interrupt you for a second. So you said you had seen these shows when you were younger. Were your parents supportive and interested in culture and introducing you to those kinds of things?
Yeah, my parents were incredibly supportive. I think they just liked that I was just interested in something. We were like that family where you don't watch TV on the weekdays. We do our chores. You have a chore chart. I played a lot of sports. My dad loved the fact that we played sports, and my mom was just get up and get active and get out of the house. So
come home tired.
Yes, come home tired, do your homework, and then make sure you load the dishwasher.
Were they supportive of you being a drama major in college?
Yeah, I think they didn't know. And my mom still doesn't necessarily understand what I do, but she's like, oh, okay, you're a good person. You're going to be able to support yourself because that's how this game works. And, and they're like, go. My dad, God, I don't remember him coming to my shows in high school. I think he was just kind of like, okay, Folami, go, I don't know, go do whatever you're doing. Good job. Not hurting anybody. But by the time I was acting in college, I do remember him coming to some of my shows.
Oh, that's nice.
There and beginning to see what I was really interested in and how I was going to do this.
What was your favorite experience while you were at, what was the university?
University of Virginia. Wahoo!
University of Virginia.
My favorite experience would have to be was getting cast in Colored Girls, which was the first play and it was the clouds opening and the sun coming out. How it happened was because there was a theater group the name of which group, I can't remember, one of, community student groups, and they were doing Pippin. And I was like, I had my heart set on Pippin. And I didn't get cast, and I was like crushed. And I was like, what am I? I'm like 18 and like, I don't know what to do. And our theater department had just brought in one of their first African-American adjunct professors, and Teresa M. Davis, Mama T, cast in For Colored Girls by Ntozake Shange. And just the process of working on that show and developing how she helped all of the ladies in the show develop our characters, embrace the movement and the music of the piece was something I had never experienced before, ever. And it kind of that really set me on the path of, okay, acting as an art.
Nice. What was one of those things she did to help you explore?
We were working with a choreographer, a lovely African-American woman whose name I can't remember at the moment. And we had an assignment to literally draw in inspirations for our character and on a piece of paper. And like, you could make a collage out of like magazine pieces, and we had markers and colored pencils, and we sat down and drew our character. I was the lady in yellow. So we drew our character's story through this piece. And then we had to explain it to the group and figure out how that would influence what we were doing on stage. I didn't know all of this at the time. I didn't have the vocabulary to explain it, because I was like, why are we drawing? What are we doing? But looking back, after being able to like put words to what was happening, it's like, what in the world? This is great.
So looking back, what would you say you were doing?
You're finding the character beyond the page, which is very interesting. Like, because like a lot of times, especially sometimes if you're in a rush or if you don't know, you're looking at the words. This is what I got to say. This is what I immediately feel. We're just going to go with that. Boom, done. But there's so much more. There's so much more, especially when the piece gives you so much text, so much music, so much motion in your body. And if you're able to maybe translate it into something you can see, or pieces from a magazine, like translating it into a different language, that visual language of visual art can help to translate the character differently in you as well.
Yeah,
I think.
And it sounds like you were lucky to arrive there, as an African-American teacher was also arriving there.
Yeah. I mean, like, that was also the first African-American theater class I had ever taken. And really the only place that I have taken specifically African-American theater classes. It didn't really happen in grad school. But it was just interesting to learn about early playwrights, early plays, and how that's like influenced the work that I did immediately after undergrad, that I'm doing now. It's kind of mind-blowing.
So what happens next? Here you are, Folami, graduating from UVA, and you have to earn your living, as your mom has ordered you to do.
I know. We can go back to family for just 1 second, because I think,
of course,
when I was coming up, I always kind of viewed being able to be an actor, or to be able to go off and have this is my career kind of experience, as like a privilege, and even somewhat as like a luxury. Like, my dad and his family are from Jamaica, and my grandparents are from Belize. My mom was born in Brooklyn. And like, they were the sensible generation. They were the generation who came to this country, and they got to be the professionals. My parents were physicians. And that is because my grandparents came to this country and my grandfather was a carpenter. My other grandfather worked in an art supply factory and a bookbinding factory. And so now I am a version of a dream. I tell stories and I've been given enough freedom in order to do what I do. And so a lot of that goes into how I felt after I graduated from undergrad. I had these very sensible parents who were like, how are you going to take care of yourself? Ta-da. And I was like, I don't know. So, and I thought you had to be the struggling broke actor, which is for a couple of years after undergrad. Yeah, lots of jobs. Lots of
What kind? Can you name them? Can you rattle them off?
Victoria's Secret. I handed those flyers off on the street for a while. Oh, and I worked. You've been to New York and you've seen like those people who are like, hey, do you have a moment for this charity? Hey, do you have a moment for this charity?
Uh-huh.
That not fun. Probably one of the worst ones.
Lots of rejection.
Lots of rejection. You learn how to handle that though, but then I figured it out. And then because I like to work out, I'm super active. So I just started to work at a lot of like yoga studios or gyms. And so I work out for free, use the facilities, make my rent, that kind of thing. And I hustle and bustle. And
that was all did you move immediately to New York after graduation?
I did. So I was like a baby and like, I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, I'm just going to audition. Right. That's what I did. And I did a lot of weird plays. Some of them I don't remember. I don't even put them on my resume, but there were a few that like deeply influenced like me going forward. I worked with Josh Fox and the International Wow Company and doing plays at the Teatro Latea, Shakespeare, that were very like physical and very like ensemble-based theater that kind of like, and that's like the world that I love. Who knew? I didn't know. I just ended up in these plays where we were like creating our own choreography, teaching it to the group, and we're going to have a movement over here, and we're moving over here, and we're crawling on the ground, and we're speaking these words, and then everything like just like visceral, a roller coaster. Oh, I love that. And who knew? That is what I still love.
It sounds like you were given the latitude or the encouragement to work in that way in that group.
Yeah. Yes. Like, and that is how the International Wow Company was. It was, God, we rehearsed in this warehouse in Brooklyn, which is now super cute, super cute. But back then it's like, oh, are you sure you're going to walk over there? Yeah, I'm cool. Yeah. And like, we're rehearsing in this warehouse in Brooklyn and there's like 40 of us and we're breaking off into groups, creating choreography and movement to different text, women speaking different languages. What is it? Auto de fe. And what was it? We did a play called Reconstruction, where we literally built a house, framed out a house, and then took it down.
Oh my gosh. Oh, cool.
During the show. And so I love all that. I love all that. And I love the feeling of being part of a group and experiencing everybody's perspectives and having that come together. And I think that is so important. It makes the whole acting experience in this career interesting and like magnetic. And it's why you can keep doing it, and why you can keep facing that rejection, because you're going to find like this explosion.
So here you are, learning how to deal with rejection as you're accosting people on the street. Yes. And doing shows in out of the way places, but work that was really exciting. And then what happened next?
I got a job, like a real job. I became a social worker. I think,
Whoa.
yeah, like only because I'm hustling. Like beautiful theater like that doesn't really pay you that much, you
Mm-hmm.
know. At least not at the beginning, non-equity, we're just, hustling literally. And so I don't I don't know what changed, but I was just like, it had been maybe 3 to 4 years, just about 3 to 4 years in New York City, just kind of like hustling and bustling, rolling, working, job, 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 job. And I was just kind of like, I need healthcare, I need healthcare. Who knew you get paid vacation? And I had no idea. I became a social worker. I worked in the foster care industry at
Mm-hmm.
a agency in downtown Brooklyn, HeartShare Human Services. I worked with foster parents and I taught foster parents and ran courses for them to become foster parents. And I did a lot of like home checks and I wrote home plans, or like I would go to a family that wanted to adopt or be a foster parent. And we literally write like this person's entire history from where you were born, what jobs you've worked, relationships you've had, what do your siblings do? If you have siblings, what did your parents do? And we write like this whole story about them. And it goes into like part of their application process. And I had been working at HeartShare Human Services for 3 years doing this. And and I liked it. I love meeting people from different walks of life and different stories, like these immigrant stories, these families that we don't normally see, just living day to day.
Mm-hmm.
It goes to work. I go to work. I have a couple kids in school, or I run a daycare, or I mean, like just like normal human stories. It was fascinating, actually. And I was going to go back to school to either get my master's in social work, because you needed a master's in order to move up and be promoted, or
Uh-huh.
I had a friend. I was literally having coffee with like a friend that I had done King Lear with somewhere in downtown New York years ago. And she was like, why don't you get an MFA? Because at that time I was still like, I could afford to take classes now. So I was taking classes here and there, borrow group theater at the pit, stuff like that, just on the side. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to get in. We'll see.
To an
And
MFA acting program.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was like it felt very intimidating. It
Mm.
was very intimidating. And I auditioned for a number of schools, and I got into Columbia University.
I think back when I was working as a temp
Mm-hmm.
and riding the Chicago Avenue bus to my jobs every day, and as a middle-class white kid who grew up in the suburbs of Pennsylvania, seeing all kinds of life on the street and on the bus and in the L, and realizing what different experiences were out there from my own.
Yeah, exactly. You because like you choose to do something, and that like you choose to be an actor. Columbia is an Ivy League, so at an Ivy League school, you kind of run into a certain kind of people. Instead of choosing to be a social worker in the heart of Brooklyn, New York, even before gentrified Brooklyn, New York, even. And it's like, it's really nice. It's really nice to meet people with different perspectives and different values and different goals who just want to, they're going to go to the grocery store on Saturday morning after they drop off the laundry at the laundromat around the corner. And we went to the kids' baseball or soccer game. And I don't know, there's something, the texture of that is just fascinating. And it's interesting how different walks of life bring you into contact with different minded people. And sometimes you miss certain things. Like sometimes like I used to work at Starbucks. Met a lot of cool people who worked at Starbucks who I don't necessarily meet in the same way anymore, being in a different walk of life, you know?
Is that because the theater or show business industry is insular, or is it because you're at a different point in your life?
I still think the idea of going off and performing in the arts or doing hair, wigs, and makeup, or working on a crew backstage, or can seem so foreign to especially like people of color or people who are children of immigrants. It's like, oh, I could go make a living and do this, or it just doesn't connect necessarily. And I think that you don't run into certain people
I see.
working in the theater or working in television and film, just because social economic freedom, you know?
Right.
There's something about that. There's something about that. And there's more to unpack there, but I feel that.
So here you are, entering Columbia University. And was that paid for?
So my folks gave me the gift of a undergrad college tuition. Mm-hmm. And so when I went to grad school, I did not really understand. And I look at my student loans. I took out government loans to pay for grad school, and Columbia was expensive. I don't know how much that would have affected my decision if I had fully grasped the amount of debt that I am in now. I would have liked to have known for real.
I'm sure you would have.
I didn't crunch the numbers. I really didn't. When looking at grad school programs, I wanted something that was not necessarily traditional. Before I got into Columbia, there was an MFA program where you studied like commedia in Italy. That was through that's where I was going. I was going to Italy to be a physical actor. But then I got into Columbia. I was like, I'll stay here. And yeah, the money is one thing. The money is one thing. That was quite a surprise.
How was the experience? How did you grow as an actor during those 2 or 3 years?
3 years.
Were there moments in which you recognized you were capable of more than you had been?
Yes, there were moments like that. Wow. Start with Linklater technique. We had one semester with Kristen before she left to go to Orkney. And that was quite exciting. I mean, Can you explain
for us who Kristen Linklater is?
Kristen Linklater was my voice speech professor, and she developed the Linklater voice technique, which marries efficient use of the body, connection to emotion while speaking on your speaking voice. And Great. It is beautiful. A little weird. It sounds a little weird. Listen to a warm-up. It's a little strange, but I absolutely love it. And it's I'm actually on the road to designation as a Linklater teacher myself, because I just use it all the time in lots of my audition work, prepping for Potter, warming up on a regular basis. And I continued to take the classes after I graduated from Columbia anyway. I just think it's super useful.
Great. Let me just drop in. When you said Potter, you're referring to?
Oh, Harry Potter.
And
the Cursed Child. Yes.
Which you are currently in the cast of in the San Francisco production.
Yes,
right?
yes, that's yeah. And so before the show, I always make sure to warm up. And I am not our vocal captain, but I'm like assistant vocal captain. And so we both have like Linklater basis, and we just lead the cast through a quick warm up before each show.
What else about grad school?
Ula Waltz. We were introduced to so many classical playwrights that I had never really came into contact with.
Mm-hmm.
Not all that, but like we studied German plays, Spanish plays, lots of Chekhov. And I just I love Lorca. Federico Garcia Lorca, and I'm waiting to do the House of Bernarda Alba one day. But it was it just being introduced to so many plays, because a lot of our professors at the time were from Eastern European countries. And so their ideas of the classics were quite different. Yes, we did our Shakespeare, but we also did a ton of other things. And their demands are still in my head even now. One of my professors, Andre Sherban, he told me a few things in his very Andre kind of way, where it's just like not being afraid to be a performer. I love rehearsal. You can tell. And he's like, Folami, you can't get up there and perform and be a loser. Okay. He's going to lose. And I was like, what? My soul slowly crushed. What, Andre, what? But it's true. It's true. You have to be full. You have to, the joy, it has to be there when you perform, because you're rehearsing for what? For yourself? What?
No.
But it was the working with Andre, working with Ula Waltz, where we did plays like Lulu, even to Medea, where the work that we did was just so specific. It was about opening up and reaching in and really stretching yourself, really stretching the character. And just to have someone honestly tell me, no, that's not what you were doing. That's not how it read. They were just having that third eye, the other set of eyes to tell you, to be honest with you.
That's a real struggle, isn't it? When you feel like you're giving your all, you and then are given a note that says, I want this from you. And you say to yourself, that's exactly, or you say out loud, that's exactly what I was doing.
That's one of the things that that's one of the things that I really learned is the fullness of a character is sometimes they need more than you. Sometimes with American theater and sometimes working with these contemporary texts, we want to play a version of ourselves. And which is fine. But when you're playing to an audience of hundreds, you have to fill this character enough so that the spirit and the energy of this character reaches. And I think the confusion between feeling like, oh, I'm really doing this, and really filling a character so that it can exude and go out and touch are two very different things. I learned that with Chekhov. I love Three Sisters. It's both hilarious and heart-wrenching at the same time.
I agree.
But you have to be full or it's going to be boring. So full, don't be boring. but distinctions like that, and distinctions I learned. And then we did a lot of what we call Nikki training with Nikki Waltz. And he's a very physical actor. It's like, and Nikki training was like every morning, not every morning, but like 3 mornings a week before classes started. And it was just like physical movement, preparing the body to be able to do what you wanted to do. A lot of biomechanics. You can give me a wooden dowel, maybe 3 feet long, 36 inches, and I will have the time of my life, because you can do so much with it and it can become so many different things. You learn the vocabulary for that.
Does being at Columbia automatically mean you have a chance at getting an agent, at getting a manager, at having a career that launches, or what happened to you?
We showcased, and we showcased in Los Angeles and we showcased in New York. And that was a process in itself. God, that third year is crazy. It's crazy because you've taken the time to learn how to be this crazy, imaginative artist, and all of a sudden they want you to package it so that we can sell it. So we can get an agent, we can get a manager, and we can start making money to pay off these student loans that we took out for this education. It was really stressful. Like, everybody's eating popcorn and going to the gym. Everybody's stressed because you want to be slim. See, something that has also changed a bit since graduation, since that time. But and then the mindset, that competitive mindset. But third year showcase year, we do some plays. We worked with classical stage company to do some professional shows, which is how I got my equity card.
So you had your union card when you graduated.
That's how I got my union card, and godsend. And it's also how I started teaching. Classic Stage Company in New York had a great program where they worked with our third year class to put on a Shakespeare play. And then we would also teach that play in a number of schools through their education program. And at the end, the students that we were teaching would come and see our show, and the students themselves would put on their own show, since we've been working with them to do it as well. And it was just perfect. It was a lot of fun. And I've been teaching on and off ever since, between gigs. Yeah. And so third year, showcase year, teaching year, you're gobbling plays because you're looking for showcase scenes. And so we live in the Drama Bookshop, which is in Midtown, between 8th and 7th on 43rd Street. And we you read a play, you skim it, you put it back on the shelf. You read a play, you skim it, you put it back on the shelf. And you're like, okay, this works. And you're talking to all of your professors and you're like, what can I do? And then you're having lots of showcase rehearsals, all leading up to what is literally 5 minutes on stage total. You're doing maybe 2 minute, maybe 10 minutes, 2 5-minute scenes. And then it's the powers that be. When we were in Los Angeles, I remember I got stuck in the Hollywood Hills. Nobody told me you don't get service everywhere in the Hollywood Hills. And I didn't have a car. And so I Ubered to meet this manager, because, you showcase and then the managers say, I want to see you, and I want to see you, and I want to see you. Call me and we'll make an appointment, blah, 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 blah. And so I go to see this manager in a beautiful house. We meet in his office. And then it's time for me to leave. I didn't end up signing with this manager. And I'm kind of like, okay, I'll just call a car. And I do that thing where I'm like, I say this as I'm walking out of the door. And it's like, I can either walk back in and be like, I don't know what to do, or I can just keep walking. And I decide to keep walking. So I'm literally walking down the side of a mountain with my dying phone, looking for a signal so I can call a car to come get me off of this hill. I can see the Hollywood sign in the distance. And so I call one of my classmates. I'm like, Lauren, I'm on this street. You have to come and get me. My phone is dying. It might be dead by the time you get here. And she saves me.
Nice.
She saves me. And then she comes to pick me up, realizes she has no bars either. So we have to hail down the Uber that she just got out of to take us back down the mountain. All this to be signed with some representation so that it can help you get auditions and get into rooms that I wouldn't be able to get in by myself. It worked. I met my manager, Jay Glazer, in Los Angeles, and we signed. He's amazing. He's like, I call him the bulldog. Maybe we don't say that. I call him the bulldog, but he's so fiery, and I love because like he's always pushing me and everybody else around him to do more and work harder. He always has his hands in something. He's writing or working with a writer or working with a producer. And I'm like, oh, thank you, Jay. And then I signed with CGF Talent in New York. And I love those guys. They're so sweet. They know the theater industry. And they're really good at working with bulldogs like Jay.
So tell me what the manager does for you and what the agent does for you.
Well, the roles have changed. Like managers used to really just manage. That's it. And so it would make sense to not have a manager when you don't have much of a career. Managers now submit a lot more. Like Jay is an LA guy, and through him, I auditioned for a lot of television and a lot of film. And through my New York agents, I auditioned for some TV, some New York TV, but mostly theater. And so together, we have a really good relationship because I auditioned for a lot of material in the film industry, but also a lot of material in pieces work in the theater as well. With Potter closing, and then with Harry Potter and the Cursed Child closing here in San Francisco pretty soon, and me not moving to the Broadway production, Jay is like having a party. He's like so ready. But my agent, speaking with my agent as well, they also are too. And so it was interesting. It's an interesting feeling to be like, we're not going to take the immediate payoff. We're going to actually look for material and work that is interesting and creative that advances your career. And I like the fact that we as a team are valuing that.
This Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, pretty big deal for you?
Yeah, it's probably the biggest show and longest running gig that I've been on. And
what led up to that from graduation till you landed this show?
I found that there's like a nice Columbia community. So I was able to do some work just with Columbia director alumni and acting alumni from like years ago, like 10, 15 years ago. And it's so interesting how we have like a similar like vocabulary for constructing a piece and building a character and building a show. And I have to say that I worked with the actor Danielle Irizarry, a Puerto Rican explosion, and it has to be like, he has to be one of my most favorite people to work with because he's incredibly physical. Our shows are wild and emotional and text driven, and doing The Maids with him, and recently The Madman and the Nun with him has been like, I want more. I mean, like, it doesn't pay a lot, but it's still good off Broadway theater.
When you were doing these productions after grad school, some of which didn't pay very well, were you still working a day job? Were you still?
Yeah, that was my main, like, I discovered I loved barre, which is BARRE, which is a method of working out based on ballet. I mean, like, yeah. So like I look for places to side hustle where I can get enough hours, but you're super flexible because I have auditions. So like, and lots of babysitting. We had a whole network of like babysitters just within my graduating class. We all kind of swapped families whenever we were like working or not.
Oh,
working.
that's a good system. You've talked a lot about really identifying a kind of work that you like doing, this physical theater, but also attuned to language and to collaborative spirit. Wondering how a big production like Harry Potter was different, and what other kinds of challenges or interesting experiences it had to offer you.
I had never worked on a commercial theater production before. And the idea that our show needed to be the same in New York, in London, in Hamburg, in Melbourne, in Toronto was crazy for me. I didn't experience that too much, a little bit too much, but it was just like, you can't add in this little ad lib. You can't add in this handshake. You can't, it needs to be the same, yet your own. So that was a very interesting process for me to try to experience when working on Rose Granger Weasley, but also watching characters like Ron Weasley, our comedic relief throughout the play, especially like work on things like that as well. I say that mostly because the actor playing Ron Weasley, hilarious. And there are things that he would do in our production that were just great, that they translated to other productions. And so his little ad lib because it worked so well, he got lucky, so he got to keep it. But then it also got translated to like the New York and Toronto. You might stand in the same place, say the same lines every night, but it's not always the same. Like, tonight's different.
Hey, what haven't I asked you that you'd like to share?
I still love working like in an ensemble. And Harry Potter feels like that. There's 39 of us. And it's very cool to watch. And just be able to learn from some of like our actors who have been in the game for such a long time. The one and only, the Shannon the Cochran,
Who's a mutual friend of ours. You learn from her.
Well, Shannon never stops. That's the thing. She never stops. She's like, in a good way. She's always creating. She's always like, what can I try? Let me see if I wonder how this is going to play out. She's always playing, and she's always finding something new. And it is fascinating. And you can't stop listening to her scenes. You can't stop watching her scenes. And it's because like she's always playing. She's always trying something new, living in the character, living in the story. And yeah, you might get a note to like not do that anymore. But then she's like, okay, I won't do that anymore. I'll do this. On the other end of the spectrum, there is Charlie, who plays our Dumbledore, and he is you cannot not listen to Charlie play Dumbledore, because it's just every night it's just incredibly connected. And he does it every day. every day. He feeds himself, puts himself into the character, and then he goes and then just will move the entire 1,600 seat audience. And you're just kind of like, how the hell? How do you do that? And it's fascinating. If anything, I'm going to miss being able to learn from and just kind of like pick the brains, get to know older actors on the show. It's super interesting because having a family, it's something that I want, something like that future is getting closer and closer and closer to me as I get older. And it's a question that I bring up to some of the older actresses that I run into, because it's, how do you do that and have a family? How do you, and the industry doesn't necessarily lend itself to have a baby, be pregnant for 9 months, and then come back and do what you want. And even in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child now, the people who have had like families and have kids have been the men in our show. And so, and it's quite blatant. It's and you want to know, like, how can I do that? How can I be a wizard if you want to be a wizard and have kids?
It's a really interesting observation.
It's interesting. And I'm wondering how that can change. I do think that pregnancy in the industry can be viewed too often as like having an injury, like making you feel like you have to be set aside for a while. And I don't think that's the case.
Let's end this with 3 questions. One actor who you admire.
I'm going to say that it's Regina King, who I am just in awe of, because I grew up watching her just like as a young woman, like poetic justice. And now that she's directing and producing, and a brown-skinned African-American woman, having been through so many challenges of her own, and still being able to work and make a lifetime career of what I want to make a lifetime career of, I'm ready for that. And I can honestly look at her and be like, this is amazing. She is amazing.
Second question. One thing that just delights the heck out of you about being on stage.
Most recently, I'm working on Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. And we've had with living and dealing with COVID, we've had just like this swing nation. Everybody's always on or has been on. I love a week where we'll have 3 different Albuses. Albus Potter, who plays my cousin, who I interact with most in the play. And each one of these 3 Albuses are so freaking different, or they're so different that they make these little short scenes that we share light up. And it's always fun for me because you never know what one of them is going to throw at you.
My last question is one thing you want to get better at or tick off your theatrical wish list.
Okay. Super simple. I want to do a ridiculously visceral and athletic version of either Sense and Sensibility or Persuasion by Jane Austen. And I need to figure out how to to build this piece based on this text with a bunch of people in the woods in Maine. And then we tour it everywhere. I mean, I'm so ready. That I would love to do, because I think Jane Austen tells a very interesting woman's story and of the period, and just being able to relate it or hold it up against what women are allowed to do, have, think, and say now. And I love.
Folami Williams, thanks so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and getting to know you. And I'm so excited to see what comes next for you.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks so much for having me.
This has been An Actor's Arc. Created and hosted by me, Sean Douglas, with special guest Folami Williams. Theme music by Chris Kriz. Sound engineering by Grover Hallway. And Actors Arc Season 2 was made possible by a grant from the alumni of Northwestern University.